All right, welcome to today's solocast. This one is called Into the Unknown. I just want to congratulate all of the parents and all of the Disney adults out there for now having that song from Frozen 2 stuck in your head for at least the rest of your day. You're welcome. Now on to the other stuff. So what are we talking about today? The reason this is called Into the Unknown is because I really want to take some time to explore our relationship with certainty, because it's something that comes up a ton in performance contexts. It's also something that's really alive for the clients I'm working with right now. It's something that's alive in my life. And it really has dramatic impact on how we're able to show up and then how we're able to perform. And so you can see this start to get tangled up. There's anecdotes of PGA Tour professionals who would rather hit it 25 or 30 feet away from the flag on the first hole and then two putt for their par than hit it close, like 6, 7 feet, and then potentially miss the putt. Because if they miss a short putt early, then it's really easy for their prediction machine to assume that today is not going to be a great putting day. Or you can think about a time where you had a tough warm up and then just decided that things weren't going to go well, or you were off pace when you started a race. And now your mind is kind of predicting all of the things that you have to do to create the certainty of the outcome that you want. Or you could even think about having a tough night's sleep before a big meeting, and how quickly we are to jump to the conclusion like, hey, today is just not going to be my day. I'm going to feel a little off, right? The investors aren't going to hear me or see me at my best. All of this speaks to our desire to generate more certainty, right? To create this illusion that we know what's going to happen next. This is also the place where superstitions can really take root. You think about things like lucky socks or hopping over the base paths, or tying your skates in a particular pattern every single time. And all of that is really geared at trying to create a mind that says, I'm going to get more of the good stuff in the future and I'm going to avoid the bad outcomes. And then, so I get to live or create this fantasy world in the future where certainty exists. And all the while, there's this underlying feeling, right? You know it, it's bone deep for all of us, that we can't actually have certainty, that life is emergent, that it's unfolding moment by moment. And we're along for the ride. And so anything that we've imagined might happen in the future isn't guaranteed. You ask any of those teams during March Madness or the Super Bowl when their win probability was at like 99.8%, and they still managed to end up losing the game, like nothing is guaranteed. This is also the place where fragile confidence loves to take root. And this is actually one of the reasons why when I'm working with clients, I almost never actually engage with the idea or concept of confidence. And it's because most of the time, what people are asking for is more certainty and less doubt. I feel confident when I know that I'm going to get what I want. I feel confident when I know I'm going to win. I feel confident when I know that I'm going to be able to execute X, Y, or Z. And when that happens, we're creating that contingency that says, I'm going to feel good when I know that I'm going to get what I want. But again, that underlying tension that we can't be certain that we're going to get what we want. And so it sets us up for this really twisted relationship to not only self-belief, but also to the moment by moment unfolding of our performance. So our experience here has two different layers. We'll explore these in just a moment. The first is our relationship to certainty specifically, and what that means for how our bodies and our minds react. And then that deeper relationship, right? What is it like at that deeper layer with just the tension of our desire and also the truth that we don't know that we're going to get what we want? So we're going to get there next. All right, let's start by exploring how we react under conditions of uncertainty. And we already talked a little bit about this with the examples. And we often are going to jump forward into the future and then create some illusion of certainty. And the kicker here is because of the way we've evolved, we often are going to lean towards a negativity bias. What that means is we're more likely to predict negative outcomes. Right? If you think about the way that prehistoric humans, right, the way that we evolved, it's safer for us to presume when there are conditions of uncertainty that there might be something negative coming down the pipeline, because then we can ready for that negative outcome and we're more likely to be safe and survive. And if I don't know what's around the corner, I'm better off guessing that it's a saber-toothed tiger than going like, well, it's probably just my significant other or another loved one or somebody from my village. Because if I get it wrong one direction, right, then I'm no big deal. Right? I thought it was a saber-toothed tiger. It turns out that it was somebody I know. right? But if it's the other way, I'm not prepared for the saber-toothed tiger and I'm more likely to die. So we have a negativity bias, right? I missed that first putt. And then I often jump into the future and assume what that's going to mean for the rest of the round, right? Or have a poor night's sleep. I don't eat well or fuel appropriately before a race because it just so happens they don't have the bar or the gel that I love, right? And they got stuck, in UPS, forgot to ship them. All sorts of crazy stuff, right? But we have this reaction where we go into the future and our prediction machine starts to kick up. And this is, again, evolutionarily really valuable. Our ability to predict or think about the future and then make decisions based on those predictions is really an important part of the way that we move through the world. There's a ton of value in that future prediction machine, right? It lets us move through the world and stay certainly safe. There's nothing wrong with that future prediction machine, right? It keeps us safe. But again, when it's allowed to run wild, it often puts us in a position where we create the illusion of certainty around negative outcomes, which then are going to negatively impact our ability to perform. Right? If I've decided that today isn't my day, right, I'm going to subtly and maybe sometimes really explicitly step off the gas, right, stay less engaged, end up with less attention and energy spent towards the outcome I want to create. And all because of an outcome that either maybe didn't even happen during warm-ups, but happened the night before or the day before that. And so it's not a problem unless it's in the way of the thing that we want. And it's important to really start to tune into the way that we seek this sort of false sense of certainty. And so that's one of the first ways that we react under conditions of uncertainty. I want something desperately, and I don't know if I can have it. Let me create some sense of certainty around how it's all going to unfold. The other thing that happens is we also start to ready our bodies for action, right? So we get activated in situations of uncertainty. And it goes back to that idea of our evolutionary prerogative to try and stay safe is that if we don't know what's around the corner, we're more likely to default to something negative and unsafe, right? And that's going to then crank up our system because we need to be ready to react. We need to be ready to take action. So these two things together, I get more activated, I'm spending more energy physically, and then I'm also spending more energy downstream thinking about all of the potential outcomes and trying to weigh the certainty. And then I'm doing all this mental gymnastics to try and create this illusion of certainty around all of it. It ends up being really costly for us. There's a couple other things that happen too. We start to then create a lot of expectation, right? This is on pace. This is above pace. This is behind. And expectations are really dangerous. If I could wave a magic wand, expectations would just vanish into nothing and never come back for all of us. Because I think intention is really one of the most important skills and tools that we have in a performance context. Right? But expectation, I don't think we're getting anything for it. Because now all of a sudden I'm trying to create this certainty. Okay, if I do this, I'm going to get that. I expect to be here halfway through the race. I expect to have scored this many points at halftime, right? Whatever it might be. Now, what ends up happening is I either am falling short of that, and now there's judgment. Right? I know what I need to do. I'm just not doing it. I'm not living up to my potential. If I don't do this, I'm not going to get what I want. So now I've created more uncertainty, right, through the process of these expectations. But then there's also when I'm meeting expectations, I might subtly have put a ceiling, an artificial ceiling on my performance, right? I expect it to unfold with step 1, step 2, step 3. Well, I might be able to perform better than that. And if I'm stuck in this future prediction machine and I've explained to myself how the future is going to unfold, then I've actually narrowed down the possibilities that I'm comfortable with or that I'm able to hold the tension around, which actually might subtly collapse what I'm capable of in the moment. So no matter what, I think expectations, we should throw them out the window. And expectations generally unfold from our desire for certainty. So that's how we reliably react, most of us, most of the time, in that condition of desperately want it, not sure if I can get it. There's that underlying piece, though, that we want to explore as well, which is just the tension that's created around really desperately wanting an outcome and then not having the certainty to know that it's going to happen, right? It creates this feeling. And so for me personally, the experience of this tension is of feeling off, right? Something feels unsettled, something feels not right or not good. And it often is happening in my blind spot and in this space of my somatic experience. And so I'm not getting a whole lot of like what I just shared with you. I'm not able to name it most of the time. And this is true for a lot of my clients as well. It is there's just an experience of life that doesn't feel right in the moment. And because it lives in our blind spot, we take a lot of unconscious action around it. So let's run down some of the ways that we might act around this tension. So the first is we might try and collapse the tension. We might try and get rid of it. And that's really what we're trying to do through all the mental gymnastics of creating the illusion of certainty. But we might go hunting for a bunch of problems to solve. One of my colleagues, Dr. Raymond Pryor, loves talking about panic practice. He spends most of his time working with high level golfers. Right. And one of the ways that they'll address uncertainty and the tension, that not rightness that they feel, is they'll go hit balls until their fingers start to bleed. Right. They might spend time on the putting green after a round until they can't see anymore because they're hunting for that feeling of certainty. I feel good. I know what's going to happen tomorrow. Now I can finally rest. Right? So we might collapse the tension or try to collapse the tension by seeking that certainty or expending energy trying to solve problems that we think are related to the uncertainty. We might also create a bunch of problems or go hunting for them just so that we can then stay distracted trying to solve them, which then leads us to another way we reliably react around this tension, which is distraction. And this is, if we track this back into the nervous system, this would be flight energy, right? So we get activated and then we're like, hey, I don't like it here. I want to get out of this moment. So we might not physically remove ourselves from the moment, right? But we might mentally check out. And there's so many different ways that we get to do that in modern society, right? Phones are always right around, our arm's reach, right? We've got all the media we could ever want to consume, right? And there's nothing wrong inherently with being distracted, as long as it's not in the way of what you want. And so being distracted 2 days before a big event and giving yourself permission to scroll through whatever you like to scroll through or play some video games, like no big deal, right? But if we're acting unconsciously around this discomfort with uncertainty, that tension that we feel, the not rightness that it manifests, if that's what's happening, then what that means is we're unconscious and we're acting from that place, and it probably is going to get in the way. So we might try and solve problems. We might try and distract ourselves from that feeling of unsettledness or not rightness. If we keep up the connection with the nervous system, right, then there's the fight energy in our sympathetic nervous system. And so we might get into arguments. We might be really short with others. We might be really frustrated and short with ourselves. And so this might manifest as self-talk that is more highly critical, right? We might be on our case more, the drill sergeant might be flowing a little bit more than like the nurturing parent. And so in that fight space, now we're taking that energy and that not rightness and we're pouring it into that. And we're like aiming it at others unconsciously most of the time, but we're not really actually doing anything with the tension, right? The tension is still going to be present. And then we're just trying to resolve some of that excess energy. And then if we follow this all the way through, if fight or flight don't work, right, and we can't solve, we can't distract ourselves with panic practice, then we might freeze. So this is the athlete that knows that getting their recovery session in, spending some time in the Normatec boots or, taking care of their bodies, stopping by the massage therapist, whatever it is, knows that this is going to really facilitate, tomorrow's training run or the big race that's coming up in a couple of days. But because they're so overwhelmed by the tension, so overwhelmed by the uncertainty and their desire, right, that they freeze and they don't do it. A lot of coaches mix this up and they see this as a lazy athlete or one that's not motivated, somebody who just doesn't care. When in reality, they care so deeply and they don't know what to do with this tension that they're stuck. Right? And so whether it's recovery or it's doing the preparation things that are going to set you up for success, right? The byproduct of this tension can sometimes look like not caring, being disengaged, totally unplugged. And so these are some of the reliable ways that we respond to not just uncertainty, but the tension that's generated from wanting to be certain and not being able to do it. From here, let's talk about what we actually want to do about this, right? What is there to do? And then how can we train so that we can level up our performance and make the impossible possible? So let's start with what's actually available, right? If you were able to shift your relationship to uncertainty, right? If you were able to rest with this tension a little bit more and allow it to be exactly as it is, that you would have more energy. You'd have more energy because you wouldn't be spending all that energy trying to create artificial certainty. You wouldn't be activated around uncertainty in the same way because your relationship would shift to that tension. And so your nervous system wouldn't be cooking on like, way high all the time. So more energy, generally a good thing. Right? You would also have more bandwidth and bandwidth for your attention because your attention isn't consumed with all of the potential threats that are downstream and creating all of these mental gymnastics that would allow you to find a little bit of comfort now in being like, okay, I'm certain of the outcome, even though there's that underlying knowing that you can't be certain of the outcome. And when you get more energy and more attention, these are really the building blocks, the foundations of all performance. When you're able to put more energy towards the things that matter most in the moment and you're attending to the stuff that's most critical for the mission, right? The task at hand, right? That's where your best performance is going to emerge. And so for me, this is really central to being able to not just train better and relate to your experience of your craft better, but also to be able to perform at a higher level and way more consistently. There's one more piece here that I want to name, which is that there's going to be less friction. You're going to find more ease when you're able to shift your relationship to uncertainty and the unknown. When you're no longer having to grasp for certainty all the time, what it allows you to do is just kind of settle into things as they are. And you're not sitting there spending all this energy trying to fight reality, which is, I want it, I don't know if I can get it. So then what are the steps that we'd want to take from here? First is building awareness. Right? We really want to tune into our relationship to certainty and uncertainty. And specifically, where are you grasping for or generating this artificial sense of certainty? Right? What are some of the steps you take? What are the mental models that you've created? And all of these sort of like cause and effect, if this, then that's. Right? And just be curious. You don't have to do anything with them. You don't have to judge them. Just notice, how does my mind react when uncertainty is present and I care deeply about the outcome? Right? You'll notice some worry, maybe. You'll notice some anxiety, perhaps. You might even notice just that general activation in the system. Right? So, not just the mind, pay attention to what the body does as well. Does it get more constricted? Does energy stop flowing? Right? Do you get into flight or fight, or do you find that freeze is your predominant mode? Right? So, the first is just to pay attention without judgment and notice what's unfolding. Because we can't change something on purpose without being able to know where we're at and getting that sort of baseline diagnostic. The next step is to see if you can hold the tension and allow it to just be as it is. And this makes me think of an anecdote from a Free Solo, which is a documentary about Alex Honnold. He's a free climber, so he climbs like 2,000, 3,000 foot rock faces without any ropes. So the cost of screwing up is catastrophic. And I'm going to paraphrase here, but there's a scene in the movie where he's voicing over as he's getting ready to start climbing El Capitan. Nobody's ever done it without ropes before, so it's a big, big thing for him. It's also something he's desired, he's dreamed of for a really long time. And he says, look, I have to be honest with myself and acknowledge that one of the consequences of this climb could be certain death, right? That I might plummet to, for 10 seconds and it'll be the most terrifying 10 seconds of my life. And then that'll be it. Right. And if I can't put that on the table and acknowledge that that's a possibility, then I'm not going to climb. But he also adds, this is the work that I need to do in the van the night before. And if I can't do that work the night before, then I'm not even going to get to the rock wall that day. And so what I'm seeing here, what I'm feeling is that tension, right, of deep desire. I want to do something that nobody's ever done before, right? Something amazing and spectacular and like jaw dropping. If you haven't watched Free Solo, check it out and then let your palms sweat because it's so terrifying. So Alex has this deep desire, right? And he also has a fundamental relationship with uncertainty, which is, I don't know how tomorrow is going to unfold. And then you layer on top of this that one of the consequences of not successfully doing the climb is certain death, right? And so his ability to hold the tension, to accept all of the outcomes as possible, right? That there's a paradox here that by accepting the outcomes that he doesn't want and accepting the uncertainty, he actually then finds the freedom to direct his energy and attention towards the task at hand and to find flow so that he can get through the whole process. So that step 2 would really be around accepting the tension that's here, right? Naming clearly, I really want this and I don't know if I'm going to get it. There's going to be heartbreak involved if I don't get what I want, accepting that too. there's going to be elation and excitement and joy and all the other feelings if I do get it, accepting that also. So the first is, can I start to gain more awareness of how uncertainty plays out for me in the here and now, especially around the stuff that I care deeply about? Two is, can I start to hold that tension open a little bit longer without having to collapse it down, right? Owning our desire, but also owning the uncertainty around the outcome. I want this deeply. I don't know if I can get it. Okay, can I be with that uncertainty? Can I be with that tension in my body and that unsettledness and all of the things that come with it? And can I start to let that be less of a big deal? Three is to practice in the space, being able to say, okay, all of this is present. Can I now go handle my task? What is the task? Where do I want my energy and my attention? And then practicing with little baby steps, right? We don't want to throw yourself right into the deep end. Please, nobody, if you're not a climber, actually scratch that. Please, nobody go climb a 3,000-foot rock face without ropes. My attorney somewhere is very happy for that disclaimer. Right? But baby steps. Can we take baby steps towards holding that tension open and then acting anyway, and acting at a high level anyway? Because really, the only way that this is going to change is if we start to act differently in our relationship. And that starts with acceptance and allowing the tension to be there. And then the second is then practicing with that tension so that we get better and better at allowing it while also just being focused on the task at hand. Because if you hear people who have just completed winning major championships, winning races, whatever it might be, when you hear them talk about their experience, almost never do they say, I was certain that it was going to happen and there was no pressure and I was comfortable the whole way. Most of the time, it's, my heart was in my throat. It felt like I didn't know what was going to happen next. I really, really wanted it to. I felt confident that I could handle what I was experiencing, right? Even though I didn't know what was going to unfold. And so these folks who are at the top of their game aren't there because they've found a way to collapse the tension and generate certainty. They're there because they've found a way to be in or maybe even thrive from the tension and the energy that comes with, I want it, I don't know if I get it. And then from there, being able to be process focused and direct their energy and their attention towards what matters most. So there's your 3 steps, your marching orders. As always, if you loved this, send me a note, let me know. If you didn't love it, send me a note, let me know. And if you would like to hear about specific concepts, skills, tools around performance, don't hesitate to go to drkcoaching.com, drkcoaching.com. Drop me a note there and let me know what you'd like to hear more of, because I want to make these as useful for you as possible. In the meantime, enjoy the practicing, embrace the unknown to the best of your ability, and I will see you in a couple of weeks.